didn't want to make this video, but I felt like I had to.
There are so many issues with the DNA evidence in this case that Christopher Payne's conviction has been overturned.
You know, I've been stopped by the cops nearly a half a dozen times since I came to Japan. In 2019, I was stopped and frisked on my birthday. In 2020, I was randomly stopped for an ID screening after leaving the Starbucks. In 2021, I was stopped at a station in northern Tokyo because the cops wanted to check my camera bag for weapons. In 2022, I was stopped twice in 10 minutes because the cops said it's dangerous outside. But where's the danger? And why are you only stopping me? For years, I had to cope with this because I'm a black man from the US, so it's not like any of this is new to me. But at least I always thought nothing was gonna happen to me here because it's Japan. But ever since I heard the story of Christopher Payne, I was terrified. Because of that single fateful encounter he had with the police, I realized the only thing that separated me from him was luck.
I will keep surviving.
Pressing her palm against the inked outline of a hand.
I'm tired, Mom. But I won't disappoint you.
It's the closest Rhonda Payne has come to a hug from her only child in more than 4 years. The outline traced by Christopher Payne inside his prison cell in Japan, half a world away.
Chris was everything that Japan looks for in a perfect foreigner. He's been studying Japanese since high school. Like me, he started off as an English teacher and then transitioned into software engineering. And this is why this story hits home for me, because this is the exact same path that I took. You know, while in Japan, Chris built quite the reputation for himself. He was even featured on the Japanese television show as an aspiring MMA fighter. He fell in love with a woman here, and the woman's father loved him so much that he treated him like a son even to this day. What Chris was doing out here would have made any parent proud, and his mother used to visit him regularly here. She was so happy about the life that he was building here until one fateful Thanksgiving night in 2021, she received a call that changed everything.
So I picked the phone up and it was Chris's boss. Chris wanted me to let you know he's been arrested. I said, is it bad? They said, it's bad. What is it?
Chris was arrested for assault that happened in 2021. And you know, as a man, of course I'm taken back by those allegations, because that's a serious accusation to be accused of. But when I started to look into the case, I realized that something didn't quite add up.
But here comes the first of several twists. The crime had happened 3 years before. In July of 2018, in the city of Ichikawa, a masked man followed a woman from a train station, threatened her, and assaulted her while speaking fluent Japanese. Afterward, investigators recovered only trace DNA evidence from her mouth mixed with her own after she spat and rinsed her mouth before contacting police. In a completely unrelated incident in February of 2020, Chris was arrested after drunkenly falling asleep in the entryway of a stranger's home and consented to a voluntary DNA swab, not thinking twice about it. But in November 2021, police said they discovered that the DNA was consistent with that of the woman's attacker.
You see, the crime happened in 2018, 3 years before Chris was actually arrested. The woman was attacked by a masked man in Ichikawa, a city right outside of Tokyo. And she said that she believed the attacker was a Japanese man because he spoke fluent, unaccented Japanese. Even when the investigators recovered the trace DNA left over from the attacker, it was already degraded because, well, the woman, she rinsed her mouth out. So no arrest was made for the first 3 years that the crime happened. But in a completely unrelated incident in February 2020, Chris was arrested for falling asleep drunk in front of a stranger's doorway, and he consented to a voluntary DNA swab. And he didn't think twice about it. But however, in 2021, the investigators claimed that the DNA that Chris provided was consistent with that of the attacker. Now, this next part, it's a lot to explain. So I'm gonna play you guys this CBS News video and have it explain what's going on here.
Freelance journalist Gavin Blair, who's lived and worked in Japan for more than 2 decades, began covering Chris's case late last year. Not only did Chris not match the original suspect description, the DNA evidence was anything but solid.
They tested Chris's DNA before the crime scene sample, which, as one of his lawyers described it, is like having the answer to the question before you take the test.
It looked like they had been edited in some way.
San Francisco-based forensic DNA consultant Simon Ford told me he reviewed the underlying DNA data and found several significant issues. Not only had the DNA files from the crime scene been edited to look more like Chris's DNA without any disclosure, but Ford discovered the DNA expert appointed by the prosecution also ran the test 34 times.
What he did was he tested it over and over again, trying to hit the right value.
In your opinion, would this DNA evidence meet admissibility standards here in the United States?
Probably not. I think that this evidence really should just be disregarded.
Let me stop the clip right here, because later on in this video, they said they tested the DNA 34 times. Now, 34 times is a huge number. So why did they do that? You see, the problem is, according to his own defense lawyers, the prosecutor claimed that they only tested it twice. But instead of being honest about it, they deleted the remaining inconsistent results and only kept the ones that they modified to match Chris's DNA. Now take a look at this video from his defense team.
Actual reading was D, A, and C. This means the samples contained DNA of type D, which is different from Chris's type. But Professor Y deleted type D and instead added B that matches Chris's DNA type.
Now I want you guys to imagine how easy something like this can happen to you. Police stops are common here in Japan, especially among foreigners.
So guys, I'm being checked. First time in Japan, live on scope. Oh. Yeah. It's funny. We were talking about this last time, but I'm like, it's fine. It's an experience. So we're actually capturing this live, guys. So if you guys are seeing what's going on right now.
悪いわけじゃないですけど、そういうトイレットヘアでおしゃれな方、で結構薬物を持ってる方が私の経験上今まで多かった、そういうことです。
And in any one of those stops, I could have ended up just like Chris. It's hard for me not to see myself in them. You see, I moved to Japan after the first Trump election. Now, if you remember what that felt like, it seemed like a black person is being shot on camera on a daily basis by the same people sworn to protect us. I left America partly because the system was broken, and Japan was the opposite. Back in the 2010s, Japan had this impeccable reputation, and it arguably still does. So many influencers on social media peddle and guard Japan's reputation with their lives. In pre-pandemic Japan, it was viewed as this utopia. Back then, and even now, you could walk outside in the middle of the night with cash in your pocket and not think twice. I watched salarymen passed out drunk in the street, and I used to think to myself, well, what's the worst that can happen? It's Japan. So how does a country with a reputation like that hold an innocent man in solitary confinement for over 4 years? Japan practices what some may describe as a hostage justice system. This stems from the fact that Japan has a 99.9% conviction rate, and they love to keep that number up. And although the Japanese government, they continue to deny these claims, the evidence, it's difficult to ignore. Even in the United Nations Commission Against Torture, the review panel, they describe Japan's justice system as medieval. And I spoke with a few friends here who had their own run-ins with the police, and they said the exact same thing. One of my friends, they told me about an incident in which they had to protect themselves from an attacker here in Japan. He went to the police to report what happened. The police, they listened to him emphatically, and almost as if it was standard procedure, they handed him some paperwork just so he could sign and go about his day. But when he looked inside of the paperwork, there was a confession letter. The cops tried to sneakily get him to sign it, and that's just one of their tactics, the stealthy confession letter. When a cop have you in their custody, the first thing they try to do is have you fill out paperwork. And if you're not careful, you could be signing something that technically amounts to you admitting to a crime. And this happens all of the time here, but that's just where it starts. If a cop expects that you commit a crime here, even with little to no evidence, the cops have the right to hold you for 23 days until their investigation is finished. And yes, I know that sounds crazy, but that's just a cherry on top. If you do get arrested, you're not even allowed to make a phone call. So no one except your lawyer or maybe even the embassy knows that you're gone, and this is by design.
現在の温床となっている人質司法、やってもいない罪を認めるまで出してもらえない、そんな実態をお伝えしていきます。家族にも会えない、友人にも会えない、弁護士にも会えない。
From the perspective of anyone that cares about you, you disappear. And even if your friends and family try searching for you, the police won't even disclose that they have you in their custody. And this happened to a friend of mine here. She was arrested last summer. And I remember for the first 2 weeks, the group chat was flooded because we thought she went missing. But when we found out what really happened, I just couldn't help but to feel, Why would the Japanese government go through such great lengths from keeping us from knowing this information?
市川博1993年に検事に任官しまして、検事になって2、3ヶ月でこんなはずじゃなかったというふうにかなり衝撃を受けましてね、検察教官が言うには研修所でですよ、まあ自白というのは最後に見る証拠なんだと。ところがもうなってものの2、3ヶ月で全然違って、もう自白させろ自白させろ自白させろで極端な話、多少誇張していれば少々荒っぽいやり方で自白取っても自白を取れさえすればそれでいいんだ。
It terrifies me to know that if I got arrested here, my mother, my girlfriend, my friends would just think that I went missing. This scares me so much that I try to have a conversation with my friends at least once or twice a year, remind them that if you haven't heard from me in days, please let my mother know that I'm either or in jail and that she needs to contact the embassy. You see, Japan has been long criticized by international rights organizations and Japanese defense lawyers for relying on coercive techniques to obtain confessions. The initial isolations, the confession letters, are the first step to their strategy. What's crazier is that when you're in those interrogation rooms, you're not even allowed to have your lawyer present. And there's been numerous reports of abuse, intimidation, sleep deprivation, and marathon interrogations lasting over 56 hours in some cases. They call it justice, but how? Their excuse is that they're trying to keep Japan safe. But if you're forcing confession letters from innocent people, what happens to the real criminals who don't get caught? You see, the more I dug into this, the more I had to keep asking myself, how does a system like this even form? Japan didn't just build its legal system from the ground up, it borrowed it. And in the mid-1800s, Japan feared that if it didn't industrialize, Western powers would colonize it, just like they did the rest of Asia. So they undid a previous system controlled by these local warlords called daimyos, and then revitalized it with this more draconian system, loosely based off of old German law mixed with Japanese culture. You see, unlike places such as America, where the principles of individual liberties, checks on power, the rule of law, and human rights that are deeply rooted and widely perceived to be universal, Japan doesn't share in this same tradition nor belief. You can trace back our cultural traditions from ancient Rome to ancient Greece, and even through the Enlightenment era. However, when Japan modernized, it was heavily influenced by German law because it shared similar values as Edo period Japan. Both cultures believed that confession was a prerequisite to punishment and placed torture at the center of their investigation as a means to obtaining it. So what this all means, and I'm quoting this guy, I believe his name is Koji Fujimoto, it doesn't matter how much evidence that was available in your favor. The primary goal of evidence in Japan is not to defend you, but to get you to confess. Now, I will say this, it's been over 150 years since these principles was first established. Times have changed and the laws have changed as well, but the influences are still there, and it still defines Japan's legal system to this day. This is why I personally believe that 99.9% conviction rate is absolutely false. So how many people are held hostage to a system and only confess because they felt like they had no other choice? Because even in the case of Chris, they told him, yo, just confess and you'll be home earlier. When I read about all the things that Chris has been through, I'm amazed how he's managed to keep fighting for so long. Because what scares me the most is that Japan's a collectivist society. And in a collectivist society, this system that's established here, it's not meant to serve you. You belong to the system. The extended detentions, the confession letters, the isolations, none of these are bureaucratic failures. They're the legal expression of culture where harmony matters more than your innocence. You see, in traditional Japanese culture, confessing and admitting guilt is the quickest way to reestablish social harmony and balance. You maintaining your innocence is viewed as a disruption to this social order. So what do you think happens to someone like Chris, who's been maintaining his innocence for over 4 years? Because a justice system that cannot tolerate somebody maintaining their innocence is not a justice system. It's enforced consensus. You see, recently, Christopher won his appeal. The DNA evidence was proven to be faulty, and yet 6 months later, he's still in jail. Can you actually believe that shit? Prosecutors hold an overwhelming amount of power here, and although the conviction was overturned and a retrial date was ordered, and yeah, maybe a retrial is understandable. A justice system requires some sort of due process, right? But they refuse to give him bail. Instead, the judge insists on keeping them in jail because they said, and I quote, they fear he might destroy evidence. But how? Does this guy plan to change his DNA the moment that he's freed? This doesn't even make any sense. You see, this entire case is based on DNA evidence that's proven to be false, and yet he's still held hostage. This is the legacy of that Japanese system that disregarded evidence in favor of confessions. What is the purpose of a justice system that doesn't actually deliver justice? I always thought a justice system was there to discover the truth and assign punishments accordingly. But if you define a justice system as forced confessions, sleep deprivation, and in Chris's case, modifying the DNA evidence, you no longer have a real justice system. You have a conviction quota. You see, right now, Christopher is in jail battling health issues. He's experiencing heart pains, nosebleeds, repeated episodes of vomiting. This man not only needs medical attention, but he needs emotional support as well. He's not even allowed to have a phone call or physical contact with somebody. I can only imagine what he could be going through in there, stuck in that cell alone, just suffering.
I don't know what we did or what he did to deserve this.
Watching this press conference of Christopher's mom breaks my heart because I picture my mom up there. Even Chris's ex-girlfriend father fights for him as we speak. This is a man with no obligations to help Chris, no blood ties, yet he fights for him as if this is his own son.
Just when I was about to give up, I found Innocent Project Japan and immediately sent a support application to them. After a few months later, I got a phone call from lawyer Sato, a former main lawyer of Chris's case. Mr. Sato said that he thought the result of DNA test is dubious. Chris might be innocent and would take on this case. I cried and thought he is a savior.
This guy said that he visited over 50 different lawyers and all of them refused to help him because they said that overturning DNA evidence in Japan is nearly impossible. Yet they found one lawyer that was willing to fight for him and they did it. They did the impossible. When I read about this case and I crafted my thoughts for this video, it's not like I actually know what happened that night. But that's the whole purpose of a functioning justice system and a police investigation. That woman who was assaulted deserves to be able to sleep at night knowing the actual guy was caught. Because even by her own description, that man doesn't even sound like Chris. She said the attacker spoke fluent, unaccented Japanese, something that's almost impossible for a foreigner to do. So without any evidence, Chris is an innocent man in my eyes. They strip somebody, anybody of their freedom, their time, their life. Something that they can't get back is akin to killing them slowly. Where's the integrity in the Japanese justice system? Before doing research on this video, I didn't know much about the Japanese justice system. But now I think about those annual conversations I had with my friends. Originally, my biggest fear is to be arrested for 23 days for no reason. But after hearing a story like Chris, I'm not even sure how can I prepare myself or my loved ones if something like this were to happen to me. See, when I left America, my hope was to escape a country that was destroying itself from the inside. But maybe that was a mistake. Sometimes I do wonder, should I leave Japan? But it's hard for me to make a decision like that. I spent my entire adult life here. My friends, my career, my memories, all of it is here. Japan is my home, but imagine calling the place home where you're perpetually a guest in. Before any of you guys come to Japan, please, please, please be careful. Hearing a story like Chris absolutely terrifies me. So when you come here, act wisely because the system may not work like your system from back home. And as I wrap up, I just want to say, free Chris. If there's anything that we can do to support him, I'm going to try my best to include any amount of resources and information in the description box down below. I want to thank you guys for watching this entire video, and I'll catch you guys in my next one. Peace.